I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to Claire Walsh today. She is an Irish freediver who can hold her breath for 5 minutes and 59 seconds, which is the length of Bohemian Rhapsody apparently. And she dives up to 60 metres unaided, which is just incredible. She's also the first person to represent Ireland in the Freediving World Championships. But she has also written a book very recently called Underwater. And I read this book in Italy just a couple of weeks ago and really wanted to speak with Claire. So I'm delighted that she agreed to come here and talk to me today. So let's dive into this episode with Claire. So are you home just now for a bit?
Yeah. Not going anywhere for a while.
Good. Yeah, you need that time, don't you?
Yeah, it has. It's been wild. It's funny, if anyone had told me that writing the book is the easy part, I wouldn't have believed them.
Is it just
but now
like...
it's true.
So what is it? Is it the afterwork? Is it the promotion, the talking?
I suppose like you have a certain control over, the writing. I was here in this room this time last year, and you're kind of warned that rewrites are the hardest part. I actually didn't find them too bad. They were okay. Having said that, I was getting married and doing all-nighters in the week leading up to the wedding, still doing rewrites, so it was crazy. And I think it was after that, so that was kind of so then in January, there's still little bits to do. Luckily I worked with a terrific company, Gail, and there's lots of little things to fill out, and I I still can't even put my finger on it. I'm still too close to it. And I really enjoyed the media aspect afterwards. But it was full on. And I think for me, a big thing was what next.
Yeah.
And I still don't know what's next. I think I thought it would, things would line up quite quickly, but that's not how things work. So there's a really strange adjustment period. Yeah, clearly I don't fully have the words to articulate it just yet. It's strange.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what's next.
Yeah, and well, firstly, I'm doing a TED talk in 5 days time. So I am really excited about that. I'm really excited about that. That's on in a place called Rathoth in Ireland. And yeah, it's funny because I was to do a TEDx last October. In the midst of all this, the timing was awful. And I just, last minute, I had to say, I can't. It was a really hard decision to make because all the hard work was done. But I knew I wouldn't enjoy it because I was literally thinking, okay, I come home, I'll work for 2 days, then I think of my hen party. Okay, so if I work the morning of my hen party, everything was crammed together. Yeah. So now I have space. Yeah. And my talk is done. I've selected my pictures. I did a rehearsal there yesterday. I'll do a rehearsal again this afternoon. So I have space to enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes some things don't happen and you're really disappointed by them, but then actually later you realise, I'm glad I didn't do it then because now I'm so much more informed or relaxed, whatever it is.
Absolutely. I just was wired at that time and so stressed without realising it.
Yeah.
So this is lovely. The timing of this is perfect.
Oh, that's great. But that when you're getting married, I think that's it's one of those classics, isn't it, where you're stressed and you don't always know that you're really stressed.
It's funny. I had a call with my agent January 1 year ago. So start of 2022, I guess. And we had a Zoom and she said, did you do anything nice for Christmas? I said, yeah, I got engaged. I said, and have you any thoughts? And I said, yeah, I think like end of this year. And she said, and write the book. And I said, yeah. And I thought the screen freeze because her face was one of just, she just looked at me with utter disgust / disbelief. And I said, oh, it'll be fine. And she said, okay. As in, like, going, this girl hasn't a clue what she's on about. Now I know what she was talking about. Um, I think obviously there are stereotypes of brides going mad and bridezillas or whatever it is. I don't think I was one. And as I say, as my wedding dress is hanging behind me. I don't think I was one. I think we had lots and lots and lots of things going on at the time. My partner is Egyptian, and we were trying to get a lot of his family over, and kind of last minute visas weren't working out, so none of his family could come to the wedding. So we had lots and lots of little things all the way throughout in the lead up, as well as writing for the book, which was really exceptionally stressful. But on the day itself, I did not care one bit.
Brilliant.
It was raining. I don't care. My hair started expanding in a bowl of frizz. I didn't care. I was just, whoever's here is here. We're here, and we're here to celebrate. So in a way, it definitely freed us up. I remember someone asking me, what color napkins are you having? Or it was some really inconsequential question. I said, what? I don't even know if I'm having napkins. What? Like, stop! At that point, I didn't think in a wedding dress, it was all a bit chaotic. So writing at the same time, it was just bonkers. It's bonkers.
And I think sometimes we don't always realise, do we? Like I was speaking to a friend this morning, actually, because I woke up with a migraine. I get migraines. Woke up with a migraine. I was like, oh, I've just got to take some Solvadeine so I could speak to Claire. And then I said, and I wasn't getting them last week, but I was swimming every day. I was on the beach. I was in the water, and I was walking, and I wasn't getting them for a few weeks. And this week I've been. I said to her, I've been in the house. The builders are in doing the roof just now, so they're banging all day. And Cameron, my son's home, and she's like, "So you're doing all your work. You're running your 3 businesses. You've got the builders in. You've just moved house, so you're living with a load of boxes. Do you not realise that actually just have a break?"
It's a familiar conversation. I don't know why I'm so tired.
Yeah,
because
you just need to list the things that's going on in your life, don't you? And
exactly.
So that brings to me really that one of the things on my list at the moment is have some time off this summer so that I can paint, but also write my book, which I've been trying to write for I don't know how many years.
Wow.
But basically, I took your book. The story goes that I went to Italy. I was in Tuscany with Sean Tucker on a retreat, and I went there last year as well, specifically because I wanted to have some space to start to try and think about this book that I want to write.
Yeah.
And then this year I went again because I didn't make any progress for a whole year because I just didn't do anything. And I saw your book. I mean, I followed you for a while, but I only just clocked on that you had a book. I just saw it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll buy it and I'll see if it arrives before I go to Italy. And it did. So I took it with me. And I was reading it, and I've got a pool there, actually. It was quite ironic because I figured out I could sit in the pool and read. So you're multitasking, isn't it? So I read your book in Italy, and it was just like, it's 2 things. It's like so inspiring and so wonderful to read because mostly because you're human in it. You're self-aware, you're human, and it makes you feel, I don't know, it makes you feel inspired, I suppose, to do things against the odds, not odds, but against all.
Yeah.
It brings out that well-being, doesn't it?
Well, thank you. Firstly, it's something really nice to hear about your work.
Yeah.
Firstly, I want to say when I got the book contract and signing, and I said I have to go to Dahab to write. I have to go. I can't write it from Ireland. So I went to Dahab March 2nd of 2022, got back on May 2nd, and wrote not one word. I didn't even write my name.
Really?
So, I think you should still go to Tuscany for your research trips, but it doesn't have to happen there. I came home and he said, my husband, did you do much? I was like, yeah, no, not at all. I didn't do anything. But the ending of the book, not to spoil it, wouldn't have come about if I hadn't have gone to Egypt at that time, is what I keep saying insistently to anyone who challenges it.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. So I spent the whole week there and I wrote an introduction.
Oh, wow!
which I thought was
You're
quite good.
practically done. I
That's
remember I did a timeline, and the timeline went out the window as soon as I came home. I did map it out. Just, I think I did it on the plane on the way home to comfort myself from not having done anything. But in retrospect, having the space in Dahab made all the difference. And
yeah,
also, okay, in Dahab, which is in Sinai in Egypt, and I was free diving, I was enjoying heat, I
yeah,
was cycling around, I was meeting friends, playing backgammon, doing just lots of things that recharge my soul. But we've spoken about stress and not
yeah.
realizing and going that go 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 mode. Dahab does not work like that.
Mm,
It usually takes me about 2 weeks to fit onto Dahab rhythm because it's a much slower tempo than the life I lead here. And what Dahab afforded me was space.
yeah.
And I think for creativity, space is
Mm.
absolutely necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I went to Italy. It wasn't to
Yeah.
write, it was to have that space. And
Yeah.
all those things come up, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that did happen, which is probably something that happens to a lot of people, is that because it's new to me, I don't know how to write a book. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
writer.
I
Yeah,
wrote one, I still don't know.
exactly. And I was reading your book, and this thing that happens with beginners in anything, and I see this when I teach photography, whatever, is that you read it and you're going, oh, but she's so good. She's just brilliant at writing, and she's like so free with it, and you start to think, well, I can't do it. She's it's ridiculous, isn't it? Isn't that
I
silly?
I want to just find a little picture I sent to my friend yesterday. She's a beautiful ceramicist,
Uh
Yvonne
huh.
Leon. Is her name on Instagram, and she's doing her a
Okay.
show on Friday, and I'm fixing my TED talk at the moment, so we're both a bit So it says creative process. Number 1, this is awesome. Number 2, this is tricky. Number 3, this is shit. Number 4, I am shit. Number 5, this might be okay. Number 6, this is awesome. So we both identified we were in number 4. It's not this is shit, it's I am shit.
Yeah.
But it's so much part of the process. And I'm laughing along with you because, at some point last year, or maybe it was even the year before that, I met up with her name is Ruth Fitzmaurice. She wrote a stunning book,
Yeah.
award-winning book, I Found My Tribe. I met up with Ruth and I said to her, so come here, very vulnerably, because I'm not a writer. I said, so how do you write a book? And she just said, I was like, and exactly that. I kind of wanted a dummy's guide to writing a book. Like, how do you start? So I don't know. Certainly, I still have that feeling of how do you do it? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know how to reverse engineer the book that I wrote. What I do remember is when I came home from my non-writing trip, I started to write and I started to imagine my mum reading it or an English scholar reading it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I wrote, let's say, 5,000 words. And when I went back, I was like, this is so boring. I am so the opposite of engaged in this. It's
Yeah.
so, it was whitewashed, it was sanitized. It was how I thought other people would want to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
And there was I was bored. I was bored rereading it. So that wasn't a good sign. So that went straight into the bin. And I started to write like I have written in my journal since 2014. I kept a journal, so 9 years. And then it came a lot easier
Okay.
some of the time.
Yes, it's that not worrying about what other people think of it or are going to react when they see it and just writing for
Yeah,
yourself,
and
isn't it?
it's really funny. Then fast forward to last November, and someone said, "So come here, can I have a read of it?" And I went, "No, no." And at that point, I'd done rewrites, I'd done corrections, and it was getting very, very near the time that people were going to start reading it. It was just me and my editor at that point. And the thought of, oh my gosh, that's where we're at. Like soon people are going to read it. I had gone so far the other way of thinking no one is going to
Yeah.
read this. It's going to be fine. It was really weird to have to. come to terms with, the idea of this was going out into the world. So I went and again went through the fine tooth comb of going, okay, let's take that bit out, and that bit out, and that bit out. But it's an incredible process, and in some weird way, I'm a little bit jealous of you.
Why is that?
Like, jealous is a strong word because it's a lot of work. Because I like to start that process again, or to be in at the beginning of it. There's so much learning. There's so much. There's so much nights of the dark soul when you're in front of the laptop going, I don't know if this is going to work, and then fast forward to 2 months later or 3 months, and you have a typeset in your hand or whatever the timeline is. It is quite incredible. And you used the phrase against the odds, but writing a book felt like that. It's doing something that, for me, it was doing something that I never thought I'd be able to do. So having those moments along the way of holding your book, a tangible book, it's incredible. And as I say it here, I know I don't do it enough. I tend to move on to the what's next and, the next project. But it's an insane achievement. When anyone else told me they'd written a book, I thought it was the most incredible thing. And then when I do it myself, you kind of gloss over it and move on. But it is something I'm incredibly proud of. And you get to know, well, it depends on the book you're writing, but I certainly got to know myself in a different way doing it. I have to remind myself of her.
Yeah, and how much you've achieved. It's just incredible. But I think it's more than just a book. I think for me, I love books like this. I don't really read fiction. I do occasionally, but I prefer real stories of real people. And for me, there's a lot in this book. It's not just about free diving. In fact, we haven't really mentioned free diving yet. But it's not just about that. It's about mental health. It's about how being in the water and having your own connections can bring you back to yourself. But it's also the other thing. There's those things that really connected with me, and also this kind of like. I loved your humour, and I loved the sort of body acceptance part of it as well. I thought that was really valuable for a lot of people. And, I feel that for myself as well at the moment. And, there's those things that you touched on. And actually what I've done, right, I'll tell you what I've done, is I've got what I do with books that I like. You have to be a really good book to, you can see it here. It has like bent over pages and I'm writing. Is that okay? Sorry.
Yes, I'm the same.
Oh yeah. I was like, highlight if it's really good, I'll really highlight it and put a little.
Yeah, I'm the same. I read a book recently and I had borrowed it, so I didn't want to absolutely deface it. So I was taking pictures of the page and then just going to town on my phone. So while I had ordered a copy, so yeah, it's badges of honor, just putting it all over the page.
Yeah, the genius parts, for me, I'll tell you. What I've done is I've just I've highlighted them on my screen so I can go through. And you don't mind doing this, do you? Because
Go for it.
It'd be quite good.
Bizarre, but let's do it.
It is bizarre, isn't it? So
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the story of your freediving is, people are going to buy this book and they're going to read it for themselves. So there's no point us talking about it. You don't need to tell us about the story.
One big massive spoiler.
The bits that got me were the breathe. Right, so breathing. The pause chapter when you were talking about. I've got a little bit here. I'll just read it for people that are listening. Sure. Just take a deep breath, because you're a breathwork teacher, aren't you? Or you were. I'm sure you're still doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I just read this book? It's just brilliant. How many times have we been told to do this? Habitual postures shape our bodies. We develop tension, muscles tighten while others compensate. Our experiences start tweaking how we present ourselves. Our environment and beliefs take up residence, locking us into an idea or aesthetic of what our bodies should look like and what we must strive for to be considered normal or beautiful. Trauma, each interaction, how and when we should show emotion, that technology will layer into our lives and keeps us constantly stimulated and locked into a state of pseudo-alertness. So many elements crisscross and overlap, creating a feedback loop to our brain, restricting and limiting our body's most intuitive movement. So this is to do with how we don't know how to breathe anymore, isn't it? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And how we're born knowing how to breathe. And
Yeah.
this is something that, my freediving instructor, when I was first learning, an example he used, if we had a newborn baby and we laid them flat on the table and they were breathing, we would watch their bellies rise, fall, because their chest muscles weren't developed. So we're born, engaging our diaphragm to breathe. And as our chest muscles develop and then everything else becomes layered, our bellies kind of become uninvited to the breathing party, and so much of it happens, across top of our chest, just around the clavicle, and that kind of short, shallow way of breathing, reinforces itself, reinforces stress. If you think about someone that is in a high state of stress or anger, or any sort of those more or excitement, so it doesn't necessarily have to be negative, the heightened emotion, it's short and shallow breathing, with shoulders kind of dancing below their ears almost. So to reverse that and bring it low into the belly, in a way now, it's kind of counterintuitive because, of how we've been doing it for years. And, kind of what I touched on there is all the stories we have.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the bit that's forgotten.
Yeah.
The stories that we have about how we should look, how we should hold ourselves, what we believe in the world, how we put ourselves forward in the world, affects the tension in our body and therefore affects how we breathe. And it's funny, just as you read that little part, I know why I wrote it, or I know what I was thinking. This idea of aesthetic. I worked as a musical director for years as well. I ran choirs, and it was predominantly women, and women in their 50s at the time, 50s, 60s. And, anytime I said, okay, folks, I want you to take a big deep breath in, I would watch their shoulders go to their ears and their bellies get sucked back. I'm going to go, oh, okay, just exhale. We're going to do that again. But it's so hardwired. This is the era that, as someone described it to me, like, was wriggling into tight jeans, sucking in their belly to get the top thing after her jeans had been washed. I don't know why that stands out so keenly in my brain. But this idea of, taking a breath in and pushing your belly out was really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
Aside from the physical element of being unused to it, letting your belly go. Whoa, that's something that we're not used to doing, and something that's almost dirty.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly somewhat taboo. Maybe not. It doesn't feel so much for my generation, but certainly maybe one up as well. But breathing has so much to do with your body and how you put yourself out in the world, and that kind of has that overlap with body acceptance as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And I've been learning this for many years because I've been trying to find a cure for my migraines for like 20, 30 years. And I've gone through the whole lot, everything. So that sort of diaphragmatic breathing is actually really important
Yeah,
because I ended up with a shoulder that was kind of stuck like this from holding tension, going like this,
yeah,
in years of stress. And then I went to a breathing rehab lady after
yeah.
COVID, and she did a lot of that sort of work with me. I'm struggling with it. So the one bit in your book that I didn't read or I skimmed was the COVID bit. So I just kind of I don't know if we should be talking about this, but I couldn't
Go
read
for
it
it.
because, so let's go for it. Yeah, let's go for it. It's highlighted that I've got some issues. So,
Mm,
but I just couldn't face reading it, and I still
mm,
struggled to talk about it because I was quite sick right at the beginning, just before COVID, before lockdown. So it was before there was any
mm,
help. So I didn't get any help. So I was kind of left in quite a bad state, and I struggle to think about that, and I struggle
mm,
to talk about that, and I kind of just don't want to know anymore. But I don't think that's very healthy because I know you had a terrible experience. Well, I kind of read a little bit, but I knew it. I knew
mm.
what you're talking about when I was reading it, so I knew what was happening.
Yeah.
but it was my breathing that was particularly bad. So I ended up getting a private rehab because I went into dysfunctional breathing patterns, and see she sort of slowly. But it's 3 years. It's over 3 years now, and I'm only just getting back to. I think my body's kind of broken down over the 3 years because I haven't been able to exercise. But now I'm just getting back to the place where I can start again. So it's 3 years of my life, I suppose. So maybe that's why it's hard to talk about. But you seem to be okay with it, or okay with talking about it.
Like, it's funny, you made a face in the middle of that, and that face is really, really familiar. I make that face a lot. The kind of, oh gosh. Is it hard to talk about? No. I have learned that I probably process things by talking about them now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there haven't been nights where I wondered if I'd ever be better. And it's it's actually not funny at all, but Booty, which is my husband's name, Booty and I it was October of 2021. And, we were together, and I'm kind of wondering the way I'm declining, the rate at which my health is declining. Am I going to be in a wheelchair by this time next year?
Yeah.
And then you're kind of going, oh, what life will you be signing up for? And it was around the time where, washing my hair was too much for me.
Yeah.
So I was sitting on the floor of the shower, and I suppose my heart is pulling, hearing you talk about it, because the physical aspect is really difficult.
Yeah.
The mental aspect is the absolute and utter head F. It is what it does to your sense of self, your sense of identity is so damaging. Yeah. It's really difficult. And it's funny because my publishers kind of gave me free rein, and they fought me on very little. Early-ish in the process, they fought me on the COVID part, because people are fed up of reading about COVID. Yeah. But for me, it was really important. And okay, maybe some people follow me on Instagram still vaguely know my story, but the rough outline is depression, learned freediving, went traveling, represented Ireland at the World Championships, came home, guns blazing, caught COVID, or COVID happened, then got long COVID. So it was really, really, really important for me to add the long COVID bit in, because I could have ended it after freediving the World Championships, and that would have been the lovely, dusting hands, hurrah, happy ending. But that's not how life is. And it's certainly not how my life went. And I think it's really important, because the more, this is a real story. This isn't a Hollywood film. This isn't the hero pose. This is a real life person. And to finish it there, I don't know, it just felt like it was robbing people of a chance to relate. I did get COVID. I did get long COVID. I do have long COVID. It has changed my life. And I suppose the bit that I wrote, just as much for me as for anyone else, is that, this cycle will continue for life. And that feels hard sometimes, because you have to pick yourself up and dust yourself off. But this is the exciting part. This cycle is life. It doesn't just... It's not just, I did this was hard, I achieved this, and then the rest was plain sailing. Chances are something else is going to happen. And you take the tools from the last cycle and apply it to the next cycle. Yeah. So that's why it felt really, really, really important to me. And as a result of what I've learned about myself through long COVID, and maybe you're just, whatever it is, you're just not there. It's hard. And like I said, the physical part, it's almost easier. It's what it does to your identity. I was a freediver. I don't think I am anymore. And maybe that's a really big part of why I found some elements of the media around my book difficult, because all they want to do is talk about freediving, which is understandable. I love freediving. It's amazing. I'll talk about it for as long as anyone will let me. But there is that slight disconnect of, I know I've had breathing tests in the hospital a week ago, and yet I'm going to talk about, my achievements of holding my breath. That girl is a little bit behind at the moment. I'm not saying that she won't be back in a new incarnation in some point in the future, and she might be brighter and shinier or maybe more real and honest, who knows. But when you're at that point of mm, I'm not going free diving anytime soon,
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard.
yeah,
um
it is. Yeah, and is
so it
that
is, it's so complex and so nuanced.
yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? And it is that when you said taking those lessons that you'd learned, and actually one of the lessons that I'd learned really early on in life was that migraines. I've had chronic fatigue for years, so I know how to use the skills that I've learned from that when
Yeah.
it came to long COVID. So the fatigue wasn't a problem; it was the breathing that was a problem. But saying that, what happened at the end of December, I came out to the islands to do some work for 6 weeks, and I'd had all this breathing rehab, and I was getting better very slowly all the
Mm.
time. And then suddenly, I've had asthma all my life, and it stopped. And then I moved over to the Hebrides, and now I don't have asthma anymore, and my breathing is completely clear. It's almost better than it was before. So I
Wow.
think it's to do with the air here. I think it's just
Mm.
the air on the islands is just superb. So the breathing side of it is resolved, and
Wow.
but what I was thinking was that your breathing, what you were talking about, the breathing. I think it's so important for everybody, even if they've not had COVID, they've not had breathing problems. I think we all need to learn those skills, that basic fundamental thought process behind breathing. So important.
Definitely. And, breath work or conscious breathing, it's all very trendy at the moment. It's great.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think the downside to that is you feel like you have to go to a class and you have to learn. And, that's partly true. But the thing is, you are breathing and you can make small tweaks. And certainly for me, and I think I mentioned it in the book, I think I do, pick one song, um, sit down, put your bum on the floor, put your back to a wall, um, for the length of that song. Even just play with how you breathe. You don't hold your breath. You don't have to hyperventilate. You don't have to do cold exposure. Not now. If it's going to be a little small daily practice for the simple reason of grounding yourself and coming back to your breath, or beginning to develop that awareness and asking the question, okay, so how do I breathe? You need to somewhat get reacquainted with yourself, your body, and how your body does things. And you need to do that when things are easy,
mm-hmm.
not when things are in high stress, so that when things do become stressful, it's already an established pattern. It's something I try to do as much as I can. So now it's automatic. Um, but that's not a huge thing. Or, the other example I always give is most people drink either tea or coffee. The length of the time the kettle is boiling, stop. Put your hands on your belly and start to feel, where do I breathe? So it's not about, doing this big breathing workout every day or however many times a day. It's just starting to integrate it into normal activities that we do.
Brilliant. I love those examples, 'cause that's something real that people can kind of grab hold of, and
Yeah.
I just sort of feel that you've got so much to give in the world that we're living in just now. For when you were saying people want to talk to you about your free diving, which is incredible, and it's very, I suppose it's very, what's the word? It's not dramatic, but
It is kind of dramatic. Certainly the
it is
pictures are
dramatic.
dramatic, that's for sure.
It's dramatic. It's impressive. What you're doing is seriously impressive. In fact, I left Italy going, I wonder if I could go somewhere and learn to freedive because
Oh, that's great.
yeah, I do a lot of in water photography, but I don't dive because of my asthma. I've never dived before because of never been allowed to learn. And I thought, I wonder, I could just free dive then, surely. So anyway, that's another thing. But I did leave quite inspired thinking about that. But I think apart from that, I think the point is for me that you have a lot to give to maybe women of this sort of maybe slightly older generation than you are, because I think we're just seeing so many problems now when you hit 40s, 50s, and these things of breathing, body acceptance, and all of these
Mm.
kind of the ideas of finding yourself through what it is you love doing. I just love it. That's what I'm all about, and that's why I think I feel a connection with you.
Oh.
because I think you need to be talking and writing more books, and it's
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
just
thank
brilliant.
you. That's a really, really lovely thing. And the funny thing is, I'm not exempt from any of these things. Um,
Yeah,
I will, especially when I'm tired,
yeah,
and in that kind of the crash that's come after the book.
yeah.
How many times has Booty said, "I have a book I think I need you to read," and it's literally taking my own advice and kind of grounding myself in what I know. What I
Yeah,
know I believe, but whatever, more time on Instagram or that whole comparisonitis, when they start to kick in, it's
yeah.
kind of hard to remember what you know and believe. And
Mm,
it's it's an equation that kind of keeps on moving or keeps staying with you, and some elements will become less important and some will become amplified as you move up. I just turned 40 a couple of months ago, as in between wedding and book. I turned 40, and it has changed how I look at things. I think to talk about things, I think talking is good. Do not use that for a tagline. That is so
I think
pathetic.
talk is good.
Talking is good with Claire Walsh. No, what I mean is, you know, my rule of thumb, particularly for long COVID and now I suppose for mental illness, is if I feel that way, there are other people who might feel that way. And I know I feel isolated. So if I share it, I might lessen that sense of isolation for
Hmm.
someone else. That's
Yeah,
kind of my basic
yeah,
manifesto. Um, I found it helped a lot of people, helped me during the long COVID part. But I suppose the bigger journey, to use one of my least favorite words, it's one of those writing words. Every time you read it, or write it, you have to take a shot. Journey
Jenny.
and trigger is my other one. It triggered. You have to take a shot of coffee. So my journey, particularly in terms of mental illness, um, so I experienced quite severe mental illness, I guess, 15, 18 years ago,
Okay, yeah,
up until about 10 years ago, I suppose. And back then, I don't think there was Instagram. I certainly wasn't on it. There wasn't the mental
yeah.
health campaigns that there are now, which have made a difference, but not a huge one.
Hmm.
And it was far more taboo. It was
Yeah,
far more taboo.
yeah.
And I was actually hospitalized, a word I can't say very well, and I kept a journal, and the journal's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. It's hilarious. I can't write it; it's way too dark, but it's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
funny. But all the way through the journal, all the way through, is this drive to talk about it so other people
yeah,
might do the same. I felt such a weight on my shoulders to be the advocate, to be the campaigner. And I remember at a point I wanted to do all these things, and a nurse, I think, said, "Get better first and then maybe do it." And actually, it's taken quite a long time to put it out there in a way that I feel safe talking about it. I've gone to years and years and years of therapy, and can talk about it, but it's still quite a big part of my day to day life. So, what was the point of all this? I don't know. Talking is good.
talking's good.
Talking's
Talking's
good with
good.
Claire Walsh. But that's why it had to be a big part of the book. In the same way, the long COVID, because there was
Yeah,
certainly a lot of comparisons, or I drew a lot of comparisons, and they were horrible, scary moments of, oh my god, I've done this before, just in a different way. Horrible deja vu
yeah,
moments of, I have something people kind of know, but they don't. But yet I spend a lot of time
yeah,
justifying why I feel sick, and I'm watching these kind of questioning looks, and
yeah,
then they say, "Oh my gosh, that's so hard." But anyway, come here. Can you just,
yeah.
there's a massive disconnect between what I'm saying, how they say they understand, and then what they're asking me to do.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that was the bit that really sent my head back, 10, 15 years ago.
yeah,
I cannot believe we're back here again. And it triggered, zip, it triggered that same kind of desire or kind of gritted teeth of, no, you don't get it. Here's how it is, of trying to justify, over explain. So the book really was an opportunity as well to go, here's how it was behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Here's what you wouldn't let me tell you. Here's what you thought you thought I was negative and weak. Here's what it really looked like.
Brilliant.
And that
Yeah.
felt really important, and that will be there forever.
Yeah.
And that feels quite, that's good. I like
Yeah.
having that out there.
Yeah. And you did it in a way that wasn't like negative, like self. I can't think of the word.
Join my club.
Yes. Pitying. No, not pitying. But you did it not in that way in the slightest. You did it in a way that this is what happened. This is what helped me overcome or work through it, or these are the things that, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, like again, and I think that's thanks to distance.
Yeah.
I'm sure at the time there were other flavors in there, but I have done a lot of work
Yeah.
on myself, and it has caused a lot of conflict in relationships. And I also now know how difficult it is to
Yeah.
love and care for someone with mental illness or with chronic fatigue, because it scares you and you want to help, but you don't say the right things. And then they get angry and then you get angry. And then, it's so complex. It's so nuanced. And I suppose that's kind of my pet peeve with some of the mental health campaigns. Certainly here in
Yeah.
Ireland, it's okay to be okay. And just talk to someone.
Mm.
Just talking to someone has not ended very well for me historically. You need to talk to the right someone. And that right someone probably needs to be a professional.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I like I can only imagine how difficult it was for the people in my life at the time and the people in my life now. Um, so I'm telling my story. I didn't want to tell theirs as well. I didn't want to pack any blame or anything on.
Yeah.
All the emotions around me and the dynamics were so complicated. Uh, I wanted to just give my side and keep it as neutral as I could and try to acknowledge that this was only how I felt, and outside it could have looked different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does totally, and it was done. It was done so incredibly well, and
Thank you.
you do help other people. You helped me by reading that book, and I think a lot of that was to do with the body acceptance. I think maybe at the time, and it was only a tiny bit. You
It's
said something
funny.
during like the bit where it was in softer or something. You said my body's softer, and it's like, yeah, my body's softer right now,
Yeah.
and my body's I'm usually quite fit, and I'm used to being very, very fit, and at the moment I'm not, and I'm struggling with that. But then you said something about it. I was like, oh yeah, actually. Do you
Yeah,
know what
and
I
it's funny, if I were to write a book, if they said, Claire, you've a month, I need a book, give me a manuscript, it would be on body acceptance at the
mean?
moment. It's a really big theme topic, whatever for
Brilliant.
me, whether it's called body positivity or I think it's
Yeah,
moved to body neutrality. I don't know.
yeah,
But it is coming to terms with a body that's changing
yeah,
due to stuff beyond my control. And there's so much discourse out there on how we should or shouldn't feel about eating, about dressing, what to do, what not to do, the kindness, oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. So to actually pare all that away and go inward and go, okay, how do I feel? No, that's a judgment. Let's take that out. So
yeah,
to actually have an honest conversation with yourself about your body, it's really hard. It's really
yeah,
hard, and it's where I'm at. I look very different to how I looked a couple of years ago, and I have mirrors in my house. Every time I see myself, I still get a little bit of a jolt. It's not how I think Claire Walsh looks. And again, it's this journey of going, yeah, but like this Claire can still do so much.
yeah,
How do I celebrate that? How do I be kind to that? Like, why would he use that harsh language? And for
yeah,
me, it's always through that like gritted teeth. Um, so, it's so present in my life at the moment. It's
yeah,
still uh, something that's really prevalent. It's still something I'm figuring out. I don't know if I'll ever figure it out fully, but yeah, I think if someone said, right on the topic now, go, that's what it'll be on.
That's great. And I remember seeing in fact, what prompted me to get in touch with you, because I'd been meaning to. I saw a video on Instagram and it was hilarious. You were doing the warm-ups in the
Oh
gym.
yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's me. It's completely off topic there, but
Okay.
I think the thing that sometimes strikes me. I saw a little video of a lady with one leg who had a prosthetic leg, and she was doing weightlifting, and you know she can do that. How grateful should we be for bodies that work? And
Yeah.
we
Like
forget that,
it's
don't we?
yeah, and a lot of the again stuff I'm reading, a lot of the dialogue in my head, it's a very ableist um problem. So trying to break that down, trying to challenge that. But for example, that video that I did put up, I'm lucky. I work with a trainer, and I am privileged. I have a company that sponsors me, and
Okay,
the money goes straight into personal training.
great.
And even if I didn't, I think that's where I would prioritize any money I had. Colin is his name, and he has experience with clients with chronic fatigue.
Oh,
So it isn't the
okay.
push, push, push
Yeah.
mentality. I don't need that.
Mm.
Naturally, that's kind of where I go. It's quite the opposite. He just gets me to pull back. And
Mm.
he'll say, okay, fine, if you're doing 2 sessions with me during the week, you can do one other thing. I'm kind of
Yeah.
going, okay, so I will do a swim and a hike and whatever. He goes, no, one thing,
Yeah.
so that I don't crash. But yeah, so that video, mobility and warming up, never my strong point or my interest. So it's usually just having a casual coffee. I get busted all the time. But putting that video up, I thought, oh gosh, I'd wished I'd pulled my, like the waistband of my shorts up a little higher so I didn't see my belly. And oh my God, my boobs look massive. And my arms are, and I sat there going, no. And well, it's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like your body is how it is, and we're trying to be kinder and not hiding it. So let's get it out there. And chances are other people didn't notice those
They
things.
don't. They don't.
But it is mad what you zone in on
Yeah.
and hold so tightly to.
To yourself. Yeah. I just thought, oh, she looks great, and that is so funny. I was
Oh,
like,
shucks,
oh,
gosh.
maybe I should go to the gym.
Well, that's I suppose what I'm trying to
Yeah.
um not redefine, I don't know, tweak that relationship. So at the moment, I can go to the gym, and I feel really happy about that.
That's
Don't
great.
get me wrong, I'm going to complain a lot to him because that's just what I do. It's the pantomime of going to the gym with him is annoying him as well. I'm that kind of client. But, there was a time there where I didn't know if
Yeah.
gym would be
It's gonna
possible.
work.
So, okay, if he tells me to do Bulgarian split squats, I'm gonna like
Do it.
really go for it in terms of complaining. But secretly, I'm kind of delighted that I'm there again.
Yeah.
I'm delighted that I can complain it. I'm delighted that I am back in a game. It's not the game,
Yeah.
but I just feel so flipping privileged.
Yeah. And it is slow. I think the thing is, it is slow. I had to learn this before the awareness came out. I learned that you can't push it. You can't push. I couldn't walk up to my bathroom. I had to move downstairs.
Yeah.
So I learned that I can't walk down the street. So okay, I walked down half the street maybe,
Yeah.
but then the next day nothing. So
Yeah.
that was quite a difficult one. But that's like a classic sort of post-viral thing, isn't it? When
Mm.
but it's a very difficult thing to learn when you are used to, for your mental health or your well-being, you're used to being out doing activities. That's the tricky
Yeah.
bit. So, but tell you what I've noticed last week and the week before is swimming. So much. I was in the water so much, and then this week I haven't been in the water, and I've got migraine. And I think
Mm.
I'm starting to think now, after 30 years of delving into why I get migraines. Oh, I notice that when I swim every day, I don't get them. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I just need to swim every day.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a relatively easy connection.
Just doesn't it? But is it? Because as you said, don't we know what's good for us, and then we don't do it because we've got all this stuff to do, and I've got to do
Yeah.
this work, and
And our
yeah,
priority lists can become really warped.
warped is the yeah. So I thought maybe I'll put swimming at the top of the list every day. I've got the water's like 2 minutes away from my house now.
Oh.
So yeah, no excuse. Anyway, I'll let you be, because I'm sure you've got a lot to prepare for TED. But thank you.
I'm on a TED meeting afterwards.
Oh, are you? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for
It
coming.
has been so lovely to chat to you.
Nice to meet you.
And finally connect.